Gamification. What comes to mind when you hear that word? Is it Nintendo? PlayStation? A way to convert the mundane into something fun and exciting? Or is it a cope when we can't handle difficult things that suddenly we need to just gamify the experience? So, a follow-up question, and stay with me on this, folks. What comes to mind when thinking about gamifying the classroom? It just gives you the tingles, doesn't it? Given our current technological climate, it's good to know schools are advancing. Keeping up with the times as we work with Gen Z and Alpha Youth, society has courageously labeled as digital natives. Does that excite you, or does it stir up a sense of dread because now you have to accept the reality that in order to generate a bare minimum of interest, the classroom has to be transformed into this enlarged video game experience? I don't know. I mean, maybe this could be seen as more evidence of this further societal decline, given that children can't read or calculate numbers on or above grade level. Personally, I don't know where I stand. Maybe this whole thing is a matter of perspective. Boys, for example, tend to naturally hate to read. However, if the text is stuffed into these beautiful visual narratives where reading is required in order to beat the game, it sparks not only a curiosity, but they will be more likely to engage, thus developing their reading comprehension. Then again, if it's a text-driven story with no voice acting to carry the narrative along, they may be apt to say, "Man, that's too much reading," and just abandon the game entirely. Girls tend to be the opposite most of the time because reading sometimes can foster discussion, and given that some girls enjoy talking, they will easily gravitate towards the written word. For my female counterparts, words are music, and those who can string them together to compose a symphony through conversation will win their hearts. I'm a gamer. I've always been since my first Nintendo with the Castlevania series, which I'm a huge fan of. But that comes with a caveat. That also means I'm from an era also where adults, mainly politicians and super conservative Christians, would complain about how games rot your brain. Myself, as a Christian today, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily conservative, but still a Grand Canyon gulf away from ever claiming to be progressive, and I still indulge in a certain titles such as the Final Fantasy series. From 2017 to 2018, I invested over 200 plus hours in Final Fantasy 15 on the PlayStation 4, playing for about 5 hours every Saturday morning when I had free time. However, I use discernment when it comes to my extracurricular hobby. RPGs naturally have gamification elements such as developing experience to gain rewards to get stronger. But gamification in a classroom setting can be problematic if not understood properly. While this style of teaching can be seen as something preventing classrooms from falling behind the exponentially ever-advancing technological curve, others may actually think it's compromising true teaching for the sake of pure entertainment. Newer edtech companies set out to apply video game mechanics into the learning experience, converting plain PDF digital worksheets into one big Legend of Zelda quest. In a time where portable devices travel constantly with students devouring what little attention span is left, converting assignments to be a video game may be intended to combat this attention loss, but ultimately can compromise focus and function for the sake of a fun time. When diving into the history, we discover that gamification is not a new idea or confined to electronic devices, albeit in the form of gaming consoles or standard gaming PCs like your Alien software. But let's start here. The term gamification as it is now understood was first used in 2003 when English developer and designer Nick Pelling set up the consulting firm Conundrum to promote gamification in the consumer goods industry. Nick Pelling wanted to bring playful elements to the hardware. The idea was unsuccessful and the company shut down pretty quickly, but that same idea has voiced that game mechanisms and concepts could be applied to consumer products and other situations. In 2005, the Bunch Ball Company was founded. In 2007, a product was launched that actually turned out to be the first gamification platform. Due to the fact that the term was not yet widely used, it was not called that, but it was the first platform to include such game mechanics as scoring for the business purposes of the company. In Pelling's words, gamification to this day is seen as an ugly word to describe applying game-like accelerated user interface design to make electronic transactions both enjoyable and fast. So this was an effort to increase sales of their hardware products in their respective companies. Professors from the University of Massachusetts in Boston and George Brown College make the distinction that games and gamification are not the same thing, but exist in the same paradigm, such as how one would play with toys and develop playful design. Kevin Werbach, an associate professor at the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania, defines gamification as the use of game elements and game-making technologies in a non-game context. It truly is a means of adding rewards and punishment to an environment. It's safe to say that this word started as a business practice as far back as a century ago. Cracker Jack began putting surprise toys in every box. After that, many companies began using games, toys, and other entertainment to increase sales. So this approach sort of slithered its way into the education space as emerging technologies and the rise of edtech companies began to rear their heads to sell their tech services to school districts. Yet, a game can totally exclude educational value in exchange for pure mindless fun, as I said earlier, where people don't have to think. I've seen this occur time and time again in a classroom setting. Thor from Pirate Software, whose content I adore his content a lot. I enjoy the definition that he actually had when it comes to explaining what gamification is when you strip it down to its simplest form.
How do you gamify stuff? I'll give you an example. You ever done homework before, right? So like, let's say that you do homework and you do the homework and you spend 24 hours on it and you don't get any feedback and then you go turn it in. People with ADHD generally are not going to do this. If you take the same homework and you turn it into a question answer program that gives them results right after they type in their answer immediately, they're going to do it faster than pretty much anyone else. They'll be done because this one gives immediate results. Do that with every task that you have. Write down a list of, like, let's say you have 5 things to do and you put down your list of your 5 things and make the first thing on that list you finishing the list. So the moment you finish writing the list, you mark off the first thing and saying, I finished the list. Now you have 4 things to do and you already started. Things like this, tiny stuff to trick you into going like, I made an accomplishment. We're going to keep moving, right? And that's important.
My first experience ever hearing the term gamification came when Kahoot, the quiz platform, first arrived on the scene. I mean, man, when I saw this, I was amazed. Like, what is this? Turn questions into a game show mode? No way. This is awesome. There was a problem though. In my excitement, I ended up overusing Kahoot for a large percentage of my assessments as an assignment tool, placing any and every question that I can on its back end. In my overuse of this platform, I ended up boring my students with a tool that's supposed to raise engagement. Because I didn't implement Kahoot into my classroom sparingly, kids got tired of hearing Kahoot's trademark jingle. As a matter of fact, when the music started, a sense of dread came over the classroom with the whole, oh, not again. Another issue I saw faced with gamification when it comes to academic content is that it treats that same academic content as an afterthought in favor of trying to just get to the game as fast as possible. If so much time is placed on the game itself with academic material having very little involvement, then students won't retain it. And I can't tell you how many times I have had this conversation.
Mr. Johnson, that was fun.
Well, what did you learn?
I don't know.
Again, simple gamification is, all right, the first one to complete their assignment by the end of the 20 minutes will get some Takis or something. That is always the standard reward for now the students of this generation. This could be head-to-head or even group activities where you put prizes in place to reinforce a desired effort to occur repeatedly. Here, the game mechanics serve as a guiding framework for the academic material. The competitive gaming aspects itself doesn't replace or overshadow the academic learning, but enhances it. We now have EdTech gaming products releasing such as GimKit, which really puts the cart before the horse, in my opinion. I recently invested in an annual subscription in GimKit for my classroom because a 6th grade student that I teach introduced me to it. I tried it out and I enjoyed the deeper aspects of adding those video game elements to the activities. I didn't really know anything about it, so I just kind of stepped out on faith and invested in this subscription. But as I used it for a week, the problem that I began to see with this platform is that the kids literally start to play the game first, with using the questions as a field resource to continue to engage in the game itself. What I've come to find out is that students will game the game. So they'll just guess abacadabra on the multiple choice questions a teacher loads up, memorize the correct letter to the answer choice and not the whole answer, and then speed through it until they memorize the pattern of answer choices, the letters, the A, B, C, or D to all the questions. Then when the game is over, they have not retained a single thing from the questions that needed more attention than the actual fun activity. The dynamic splits the students' focus between academics and fun, causing the students to be more concerned about gaming achievements rather than the academic ones. Maybe an integrated progression will happen where learning and the gaming feel symbiotic and the learning rewards are real rather than imagined. Gimkit aside, what I have seen in the past are non-creative approaches where kids answer the question, and if they get it correct, they're rewarded with a brief playtime on a video game activity on some websites. Oftentimes, those over-adrenal children will misconstrue answering questions as a form of punishment rather than development because they either struggle with the material and have no sense of intrinsic development, or they really just want to get to the game very badly. With all that said, I only resort to using game review tools as a separate reward once a constructive, focused academic review of assignments has been done. For example, when students have completed questions in a Google form or some other multiple choice tool that's non-gamified, we'll do a whole class review, maybe having students go to touch a screen and select answers and break down the logic behind the answer choices. Then I use something such as Gimkit, Kahoot, or Quizzes to reinforce what they're learning through a gaming experience, taking advantage of the repetition for immediate feedback from them answering the same questions over and over again. But not to sound hypocritical, I have to be involved, very involved in that process to make sure they're not doing what I had said earlier about just learning the answer choice letter pattern to just memorize that and not the material itself. If no understanding was retained from using these tools, at least I know we covered the material in a prior focused review without the distractions of the game and stimulation. When I look back on my days as a freshman in high school from when Final Fantasy VII was released in 1997, it was the first piece of media that got me into taking reading seriously. There was no voice acting, none of this whole AAA big budget standards we see in today's games that sort of spoon feed the players the narrative as if they're watching a movie. And don't get me wrong, I enjoy those games as well. I just share with y'all that I invested 200 plus hours in Final Fantasy 15. Still, oftentimes see this as a very little mental effort on the player's end to realize what the narrative actually is. But for an epic experience like Final Fantasy VII, reading was a requirement and grasping the story was its own reward. And this wasn't a chore because the story is fantastic. It gets no better than Cloud Strife and the battle with him and Sephiroth, but I'm getting way over the hill with this. Enjoying that moment in time trained me to prefer reading story text over consuming acting. The speed of screen text taught me how to read and retain at a faster rate. When a lesson can feel RPG-like, a role-playing game for the uninitiated, where the learning feels like you're leveling up, earning experience points from assignments because you're achieving new understanding. I think that is the form of gamification that I am all for. Here's two real examples right now. There's a difference between, let's say, a Classcraft, if you've never heard of that, versus a Math Prodigy as well, if you've never heard of that also. So let me explain both as briefly as I can. Classcraft just layers RPG mechanics on top of school reality, where teachers designate level points based on custom classroom requirements. So if I submit this test with an 89% or higher, I unlock level 4, earning a new class title that affords me several benefits compared to my peers in real life. On the opposite end is Math Prodigy, which is just all virtual. The avatars, the leveling up system, all of it, and the math curriculum is buried deep within the game. If gamifying is merely offering a punishment reward system to plain Jane worksheet assignments, then I'm all for it. First one to complete the assignment wins X, Y, and Z reward. In summary, Classcraft is an RPG system that incorporates those gaming RPG elements offline, while Math Prodigy is online. And once you actually leave the computer, the fun and games on Math Prodigy is over with. It doesn't have to be so in terms of Classcraft. It gives you a RPG framework to operate your classroom in, which I think is very cool. Despite my earlier years of teaching and overusing Kahoot, I think it's still effective because it offers a base of their product where people, not just students, have to compete in answering questions competitively in this quiz bowl setup. They are improving their systems, adding all these gaming features, but they are used as an after reward when the students have already completed the first initial set of questions, absent of any video gaming opportunities. A timer and some frantic music is all that's needed to create enough of a gaming atmosphere. So kudos to Kahoot! On that. Just don't abuse it like I did. Oddly enough, despite my own gaming roots, I'm okay with academics and video gaming being completely separate and the two never ever meeting. One thing I want you as the viewer to leave this video understanding is that gaming and gamification are two completely different approaches. If for whatever reason we return to virtual learning as I predicted in my book Trouble in Paradise, the concept of gaming will more than likely fit nicely into the environment because of students being regaled to their computers once again. If you sign up to the Teacher Show, I am giving away a PDF of my book for free when you click the link in the pinned comment and description below and you begin to fill out that application to join the mailing community. You can join the community now and read the stories illustrating why education has turned into this laughable sideshow.